We're going to transition to a bit of a contentious panel. We are going to pit FinOps against engineering. Dun, dun, dun. Should we divide the room? Oh, we're totally doing that. This side of the room, your job is to cheer wildly for the engineering folks. On that side, we are, I need to know who they are. On the engineering side, we're going to have Robert Berger. Since 2002, Rob has been the chief architect and head of platform at Informed IQ, which is a machine learning B2B2C SaaS company. I just want you to say that 4 times fast. B2B2C SaaS. It's fun. That automates verification of consumer credit applications in real time for an ecosystem of lenders and their clients. He has started multiple startups. Rumor has it that he also knows how to keep an audience engaged at tech conferences. And I thought we should test him here. All right, so number one on the engineering side. Also on the engineering side, SSN, are you here? Yes, from Experian. SSN's name is so complicated that with mercy, he allowed me to use his initials. He is a PhD scholar specializing in information technology with a focus on security, currently serving as a principal architect and engineering manager at Experian North America. With a strong foundation in research and hands-on implementation, Dr. SSN is recognized as a thought leader in cloud security, driving innovation and strategic direction across enterprise environments. He is an active user and advocate of generative AI and machine learning technologies, exploring their transformative potential across cloud ecosystems and enterprise applications. All right, so those are our engineers. This side of the room, you know who you're cheering for. This side of the room, we're cheering for FinOps. On the FinOps side, we have Vitaly Biseyev, the first certified FinOps practitioner in Eastern Europe. See, this side of the room, you're getting it. We'll get there. All right. Vitaly specializes in driving cost-effective, large-scale infrastructure operations that maximize returns and deliver strategic value. So think large enterprise serving hundreds in the engineering team, the perspective of large FinOps in various geographies. Also on the FinOps side, we have Paulo Arujo from Brazil. He is a FinOps professional at PayPal with a background in corporate finance, partners with engineering, platform, and product teams to turn cloud cost data into real-time strategic decisions. His perspective blends Wall Street pressure with engineering velocity, helping teams scale fast while maximizing long-term business value. And then in the middle, so cheered for by everyone, joining us virtually, I think. Is that right? Oh, you're here. That's the greatest. All right, in real life. Bhaskar Bhupala is a senior distinguished engineer at Palo Alto Networks, specializing in driving down costs and boosting the end user experience by implementing smart product enhancements and strategic re-architectures. So today you're gonna argue both sides of the debate, which means both sides of the rooms cheer for you. All right, engineering side, you're gonna sit in our chairs to the left, red side. Come on up, engineers. Your side, cheer loudly. Yeah, there you go, like you mean it. FinOps side, you're coming to this side of the stage. Come on up, cheer loudly. Paolo Vitali. Where's Paolo? There you are. He like emerges from the dark. It's incredible. Bhaskar, you're gonna be in the middle for us. I'm gonna sit on the very edge. Excellent. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the stage. Bhaskar's in the middle. Rob, will you trade seats with Bhaskar for me, just for fun? Thank you. Excellent. Welcome, contentious panelists. You don't look nearly mean enough. We'd like to see your sneer faces rather than your smiles. Excellent. All right, to kick us off, Vitaly, it is no secret that engineering priorities like improving application performance and shipping new features quickly often conflict with FinOps' goal to cut costs. Can you please set the stage for us? What is a real world example of this conflict that you've seen?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me here. I mean, to set the stage, let's agree on what FinOps is about. So it's, if you think the ultimate goal is to optimize the cost, then it's fundamentally wrong. The ultimate goal is to understand and make data-driven business decision based on data. And sometimes, so I'm not going to share like a killer kind of a optimization story. I think we all know that that is possible. I'm going to share different stories. So I work for Align Technology, the company behind Invisalign, and our product is so we moved from like desktop application to like a cloud-based digital solution, and we have this big launch uh, that this launch was about like bringing to life this capability of like changing the treatment on the go. So that means there was like a really compute intense backend application, and the the deadlines were like really strict. So when we kind of estimate the total cost for this launch, it was really significant. Like the bill would hit, like the cloud bill would hit us really hard. And the FinOps team, partnering with the engineering team, proposed some optimizations that was not able to achieve within the time frame. So the leadership made this decision of like, let's launch as is and then focus the next quarter, end up being 2 quarters, um, on the optimization. So I think this is what FinOps is about. But yeah, optimization is a cool side effect.
Yeah, and that it isn't just sort of one thing versus the other necessarily, that you were able to do more of an iterative approach that allowed you to accomplish something that wouldn't have been possible if you had just been in conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Paulo, also from our FinOps perspective, building on that, I'm just curious, how have you seen FinOps and engineering turn a flashpoint like that potentially into an area of collaboration or have it go sideways? Do you also have a story?
Of course, and I think Vitaly nailed it. Before, like, even this contention panel that is supposed to be,
You can't not be contentious to start.
But look at this room. Like, we have principal engineers here, we have CTOs, we have architects here, like systems architects. It like enter this room in a contentious way would be me join the ring with Muhammad Ali and be knocked out like in 5 seconds. That's what's supposed to happen. But in this case, I think he hit the nail. FinOps, and I've been seeing, we all been in this situation where the company start, our company needs to scale up. Our engineering team faces a P0 incident, for example, and we have to scale up the entire infrastructure in order to solve this. And it is a good thing. We have to do that, of course. But when you don't have any rollback plan, when from a FinOps perspective, we see like weeks has passed and our build just seems like it was hit by a truck, literally. And we have to come and discuss in a contentious way sometimes. And like it's exactly the situation we don't want to be, right? When you start point fingers and asking for things after the fact. And I think one of the most interesting things is when you start maturing to a more relationship with the engineering team, and we can come together with putting, of course, together some policies and some processes that we can start discussing this. Like even Joe was showing the tree, that slide with the tree, like the predictive one. Right now, that's we aiming for. Today, we are at least happy to be in the same table discussing and correcting this and trying to understand how we can model and refine our models to predict some of these events, and how can we faster, and thinking about autonomous way to recover from this, self-healing and all of this. So that's one thing that we can.
And already you're striving to be a teammate. So I'm going to see if I can turn us back to the contentious tone that I was really striving for here. SSN, I'm going to point it your direction. Where have you seen FinOps overreach or create technical debt where it didn't actually feel like the collaboration that our FinOps representatives are striving for, but actually did feel like it was an issue with the engineering's intent?
Right. Actually, I would like to add some context before I answer that
Please.
question. Before my PhD, I would have been happy to be on the side of engineering, but because of my PhD thesis and research, you have both shift left approaches and also, as someone rightly mentioned, like innovate fast and fail fast. So both FinOps and engineering, it's not versus. So I'm kind of speaking for, yeah, we are both in the middle. But yes, definitely after speaking with some of this audience, there are definitely some organizations and teams, they still have that gap. So governance versus agility is a shared responsibility. It's not only engineering has to take care of governance and only engineering has to take care of agility and FinOps only have to take care of governance. It's not that. It's a shared responsibility. That's what my thesis has taught me and my experience so far. However, to answer your question, keeping some past experiences, not the current one. Uh, yes, there are definitely some engineering decisions that maybe especially with the help of leadership, where you will have some freedom of innovating, adopting some bleeding edge technologies that could introduce some cost without having proper alerting. And so now, I mean, my current me understands, like when FinOps team reaches out, like you need to have those alerts, budget alerts, you need to have those in place, monitoring in place, and all that stuff. If it is if a spike is temporary, that's okay for your POCs or for any innovation. But if a spike is not temporary and if it is a continuous one, that's where I think Sedai like tools would help us bridge the gap between FinOps and engineering, where you can have those alerts in place and help FinOps team work closely with engineering. While innovating, you can also make certain decisions that could reduce cost in the beginning phases itself.
Bhaskar is going to follow up with you, and I'm curious, you're straddling the middle. Is there a story where, from your engineering perspective, you won a FinOps team over, or vice versa, from your FinOps hat, you won an engineering team over?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing is the very detailed dashboards are essential so that engineering kind of appreciates when FinOps asks something. But here is the thing: just visibility alone isn't enough. There need to be some automation to help the engineers so that they can act fast. So because one immediate example comes to mind. So we had these anomaly alerts. They're beautifully curated by our FinOps team, provided from AWS, and they were pushing these alerts to Slack, right? But there were too many. Now, unless we work with them and we set up like a thresholds dynamically for non-prod environments, production environments, and depending on the to reduce the noise in the mind, right? So after this is done, we see dramatic change, right? The way response time, or it's like a kind of they're working together rather than I tell you, you fix it, right? So as much automation as you can do to help the engineer, so it's like a win-win, right? You have to work together.
And it sounds like part of what you're really articulating is the distinction between signal and noise, which we've been hearing about all day. That
exactly,
you can have a million alerts, except that if there are too many, I can't address the things that are actually significant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm watching dramatic nodding from your fellow panelists. So shared experiences, I assume. Yeah. Rob, I wanted to pass it down your way. And from my research, you have quite deep stack experience, sort of every layer of the stack. And what I'm wondering about is, how do you balance choosing the best tech tools and architecture with keeping cloud costs manageable? And specifically considering this moment that we're in, what is AI's role in helping keep those costs manageable as you're choosing the best technical technical tools?
Yeah, well, I think, my experience has mainly been in startups compared to some of these big enterprises. And in the life cycle of a startup, it really changes quite a bit. So in the beginning, you're really focusing on just making things work and getting them performant. And so cost isn't the biggest thing. But then you come to a stage where it's time to become profitable. And so I think one of the themes actually is that FinOps and DevOps, FinOps is really an extension of DevOps. And the philosophy of DevOps is to be business driven in the end. So if you have teams that can work together and explain, you don't want one team saying, this is the only technology, we have to use it. The decisions have to be made in the context of the business. So coming up with an architecture that allows you to do that early stage experimenting and developing and delivering, but then knowing that you can evolve that to reduce costs. That's what we found. We're able to have an architecture that got us to the point where we were delivering, but then we could then focus on cost reduction, guided by our CFO to kind of give us some guidance of where we're going. That really helped a lot.
And it sounds like it's a little bit like some of the other stories that we've heard around being iterative, that you needed to make sure that it was working, and then you could bring in some of those cost savings. I'm curious, Bhaskar, I'll point it to you, but anyone can chime in. Where specifically do each of you see the role of AI in being able to bring those costs down?
Yeah, certainly I think AI will play a very, very pivotal role in to make when we are running fast. You don't want to run too fast while the expenses and wastages will also spiral up. So AI should be able to explain, help us in achieving this without with a reasonable expenses increase, right? So at least some of these things, what I think is one of the first thing maybe is automated identification of spikes and remediations, right? These are first and foremost thing, and we are already in that journey, I would say. I think it will get a lot better. So right now it is still at alert stage, but then we are working on automated remediation. That's where the key trick is, right, to achieve the lower expenses. Then apart from that, like identifying idle resources. So it can understand the behaviors when somebody is using, when somebody is not using, especially non-production, and then cut down the services so that the efficiency is improved. The third aspect, I think, is the dynamic scaling and predictive. So it can predict where the services are needed, and maybe it can set up before the service is actually needed and actually stop when the services go down. Right? So it will also help the forecasting, because that's one of the major actually concerns we go through with the help of FinOps and engineering. There is always a weekly meeting to see, okay, what is the forecast? Last week we went up, what happens next week? So all of this, I think it will drastically bring down the human toil in looking at these graphs, and that would be the other aspect. So, overall, I think AI will play a crucial role. While we are running fast, it doesn't, the expenses will not spiral up.
Excellent. SSN, I watched you.
A fourth aspect that I would like to add is, of course, there are types of organizations, right? As Robert mentioned, there are startups, there are matured enterprises where the cloud is matured enough. So with especially startups, going for a shift left approach might be a challenge. But AI in place, what you could do is, types of workloads, right? Latency sensitive workloads and high TPS workloads, and you need resiliency in place no matter what the cost is, active. So knowing the type of workloads for your application, and leveraging, of course, defining certain factors into that AI models for your needs can also help. So whatever he just now mentioned, those are definitely helpful for matured cloud, where you have already implemented stuff and you need to cut down costs through predictive analytics, right? Whereas even in the startup based companies, if you have AI from the industry learning experience data points, it can also help there.
Sure. And it's very interesting what you're saying, because especially thinking about the FinOps, the way that we operate, I think so far we've been the whole practice has been very human, understanding patterns and go to the engineering team and try to change things. And the natural step with AI will be all these automations, but that would be a change in the way that we perform FinOps, but not necessarily something that is going to replace the need for FinOps, right? We understand that there is more, every industry, every company has their own cyclical business patterns that we need to discuss, we need to understand, we need to get back. Everything related to the AI models, it is related to the quality of the data that we are inputting. So there is a change for sure in the way that we do FinOps, the way that we partner with engineers. And that's the most exciting thing, is even like understand the Sedai, what these guys are doing, right? Already automating most of these, what we have to do, what we've been reliant just in recommendations that never goes anywhere. And right, it's AI, it's a moment for us to the contentious part that you really wanted us to do, that to happen so many times when you're trying to put a recommendation that we believe, right? We as a FinOps team, we believe that changing that resource or switching regions, whatever it is, we can benefit from this, and it's not a priority for our engineering team. And we now in a moment that we can pivot just for out of this, but like how can we actually add value for the company, right? Like it's from, even as I mentioned, my perspective is always to bring and bridge this gap with my engineering team, coming from understanding the investors' perspective, what Wall Street wants, and we want to scale up, but scale with bringing value to the company, right? So I think that's when we start pivoting for things that makes more sense. And sometimes it's very hard when you talk about unit economics. Some companies, retail, it's easier, is right there, but like when you have a more complicated API support company, we need to break this down. If you have a company that has different portfolios like PayPal, you know, you have merchants, we have different peer-to-peer, we still need to refine this and get to a point to understand the unit economics that sometimes it will be for each one of the brands. And I think that's the possibility to shift the conversation that the AI is bringing. It's very positive.
Vitaly, I'm curious. I haven't heard your voice on this topic. More to add?
No, I mean, I think it's all summed up really good. I definitely big believer that the AI will definitely help with, like, assist with like automating or reducing the toil this team being brought up today. And yeah, 100%. Like, I think it will depend on like the amount of risk that the company or is willing to take on like how big of the autonomous, or like what would be the autonomous portion. But I also believe that this will democratize access to the data and to the insights, and will kind of reduce the noise and kind of provide tailored recommendations that's for like every engineering team that they can implement, and they can range them, or AI can help to range them in terms of like complexity, so that like, hey, these two things you can take into your sprint, or these like two big optimization that you need to plan as a project for like your next 2 quarters, and this is like the total kind of a savings. So yeah, really looking forward to it, but I think it's also it will take some time.
And I'm curious, is there an example of something that you have seen work well, where you said, here is something to take into your sprint, and then it was both delivered and it saved money? And for folks on the panel, so something that, a specific example of something you've seen work well, or I find it more interesting, something that you tried and just fell completely flat on your face.
I mean, I think like kind of adding up on this conversation about like the FinOps team having a lot of ideas and a lot of kind of recommendations, and then like actually like making engineers take action on this is really still a tough challenge, I believe, for many FinOps practitioners. But what worked well for us is kind of a distinguish like essential non-negotiable optimizations that are not supposed to be planned as a project, but more of like kind of a routine process. So the way we implemented this by creating like a virtual role in engineering teams, so that, and then kind of work with the engineering managers so that they understand what are the clear kind of expectations and the KPIs, and then build a process on top of it. So it's not like another surprise that, hey, FinOps team just brought this like new optimization. It's now on them to kind of actually take a look at what is recommended and make sure it's kind of implemented.
It's less of a sort of throw it over the fence and hope that they implement, and more of a, this is actually mandatory.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we're
this is
building it
mandatory, and this
together.
is how you can track it. So like the central FinOps team is now enabling them with the tools and recommendations, and it's on them to kind of make sure they are kind of working on it within their, like, prioritizing it between their like regular business features.
Great. Specific
just-
example or process, Rob?
Well, so I mean, I think one thing, it's not particularly AI, but probably the biggest thing that we did that really kind of closed the loop is exposing the engineers to what specific costs some of the different things that they've deployed are, very specifically, what lambdas are more expensive, and that helps them really focus on first of all understanding, and then knowing what's kind of the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. It's not that sort of FinOps is playing the role of the parent and saying like, naughty, naughty, you can't spend that. It's much
Well, it's
more
not- yeah,
around
well,
like,
it's-
once I understand, then I'm a partner
again, it's
in
not,
it.
yeah, they're not saying don't do this. They're
Right.
saying, here, this is
Here's
what's
the
happening.
information, let's make
You
the
guys
choices.
figure out how to make it better,
Yeah.
which
As a-
engineers like to do.
Yeah, right. Given the opportunity to make something better, they will.
Right.
SSN?
And to your specific question, right? I think in a given sprint or quarter, right? There are certain deliverables that you plan to deliver, and you would also retrospect and see if it is within the budgets or not. And I think majority of the times it has been successful. However, talking of scale, and end of the day, we are all humans. Not every factor would be in our favor. Even though I've been successful in delivering those two both simultaneously, I do foresee, even for myself or anyone, it is always possible that it could fail either in terms of delivery if you're focusing on shift left approach on restricting budgets, or if you focus on innovate fast, fail fast, where you would increase significant amount of cost, right? So that's where AI would come in play. Of course, I'm connecting dots with the previous question.
Sure.
So in order to have that both delivery and the cost, and of course I'm also adding security in there because of my expertise, right? So
Because why have two if you could have all three?
yes. So having that predictability aspect definitely adds. In fact, I have a wish, if anyone in the audience who are executives, who would they prefer to listen first? Is it engineering or FinOps?
Should we have them arbitrarily cheer for their side, or should we actually ask?
Yeah. So I think Sedai lens could add that arsenal to the executives. That's what I foresee. They do not have to listen to any single FinOps or engineering anymore. They can have at their fingertips, they can ask questions like, what's really costing more, and is it really required for the engineering?
Right.
So those kind of things, I think that would be a game changer.
Yeah.
For the customers.
Well, completely changed the game that we're playing.
Right.
Yeah, great. All right. I would love to see if there are any questions in the audience. Otherwise, I will ask mine. All right, 1, 2. Somebody help me with the microphone. 1, 2. Thank you. I appreciate you, Wilkin. Thank you for running.
Okay. Yeah, number of panelists actually mentioned about proactive and remediation, right? So in that case, based on your experiences, what are some of the things that obviously there are low-hanging fruit that automation can address, right? Especially when it's based on AI predictions and things like that. But what are some of the guardrails or what are some of the configurability that you expect from such a system?
Is there someone you want to answer first?
In general for the panel.
Yeah, I think one of the main factors, I think now I might be talking for FinOps personnel here, asset management, and to be able to distinguish between your environments and your products that you have would add a lot of value to build any guardrails depending on the type of assets that your team is building, right? If it is a innovation or MVP that your team is trying to build, you can choose a sandbox environment where the budgets alerts are kind of flexible. You do not test that in a critical systems where it would impact, right? So some of those guardrails will be anyone will be able to build guardrails based on the asset inventory that you have. If a good asset inventory, then you can build good guardrails, especially with AI in there.
FinOps folks, any specific guardrails you would recommend based on his question?
Nothing really comes to mind. Like,
Okay.
I mean, super generic stuff. Like if you can just automate some of the like stuff that are really not needed, like not exposed, like virtual machine to the internet or stuff like this. But it's more like in between like FinOps and the security things. Maybe, yeah, just have limits. I mean, it's the good thing is that some of guardrails are already kind of built in with the CSP, so you cannot like run like 1 billion virtual machines all at once. You need to kind of you will reach a certain threshold. So yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like you are also articulating that there's some elements of low-hanging fruit that everyone knows to do. It's sort of what's that next piece that's even more sophisticated or nuanced or creative. Tell anything you want to add?
Yeah, and that's kind of that's when it comes to play the role of FinOps again, being very close to the engineering team, right? To understand what actually you have, look, from a security perspective, you have some guardrails that you have to be very accountable for, not risking your system that much. So I think that next phase has to be something very, very well thought with the team so you can understand how go beyond the low-hanging fruits, right? Low-hanging fruits is easy to just automate, and that when gets again the contagious part when you go and try to do things that are a little more riskier. So every company will be like a tolerance for risk that is different. You have to be with your CCOE team to understand some of these policies, what's behind in the implications. So I would say.
Excellent. Oscar, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think another thing, just want to add to what I was saying. If the environment, whatever you're working on, non-prod versus prod, I think this distinction can help a lot. For example, when we deployed Sedai in our office, all non-prod, we wanted to be aggressive, right? So do and show me how much cost you can save in a month, like that, right? So you can fail, it's okay, but we want to understand, do your worst and see how it will affect our product. So
True
this
story.
differentiation, right?
True story.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to extend on that, right? So if you can, also another thing is tagging resources anywhere. So the owner of who owns this resource, I think this is extremely helpful. Maybe you should push the companies. So if you want to do some change or if something failed, whom to alert. So this has been an extremely laborious process. It has been, and we are still not there yet. But anytime there is an issue happens or some spike happens, whom to reach out. So that itself takes a day, which is not acceptable, right? So maybe those two aspects.
Because a whole day is way longer than 5 minutes. Excellent. All right, for each of you, I would love to hear your closing takeaway thought for folks in this audience. And you can do a closing takeaway thought and or a question that you would encourage them to ask in their own organization. So a closing thought or a closing question that you would encourage them to ask. Rob, are you willing to start?
Well, I think just echoing what I was saying earlier, that sharing very specific costs with the engineers, in real, near real time is probably the best thing that you can do.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. And the question that I might ask each of you is, which cost do you hope your FinOps team doesn't notice? SSN.
Yeah, my closing thought would be, I think it's a pretty famous, even someone representing SeedGeek earlier mentioned, their focus is building better solutions and tools, not to worry about the underlying infrastructure costs, those kind of nuances, right? So I think it's about time that we adopt the tools that serve the predictability aspect, so that you do not have to focus on automation versus autonomous. You do not have to focus on the scale up needs. Maybe the baselines you can set up and let those tools take care of the scale up needs. That's the takeaway for me.
Is really emphasizing how much can be done autonomously so that the engineering IQ is really devoted to the more interesting and challenging questions. And Sedai will Venmo you later. Excellent. Okay. Ready? Please.
So yeah, so I think FinOps and engineering, it's not just working together. I think they need to work like hand in glove, right? So I think AI will really help in this process, reducing the contention and make it as much as automated.
Yeah. So this is like Bhaskar closing comment is use AI to bridge the gap as you sit in that bridge seat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Harmony that was always there despite my attempt. Vitali?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of engineering versus FinOps is definitely will create some tension, especially when there are some something is happening in the production. There's an incident or there's like a cost bridge, but be proactive and kind of establish define the ownership, like who is responsible for do this mapping between the cloud resources and the engineering teams, and work with them to so that they can understand what do you expect from them, like how do you expect them to act on the budget, what do you expect them in terms of the optimization, not to be not to just come out of the blue, just have this kind of a clear kind of a conversation on what is expected, make sure that they understand that it's not top priority, but it's something that they cannot avoid then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's part of that ongoing day in, day out, keeping the lights on experience with each other. And it's an interesting question for everyone in the room to think about. Who are your partners in whatever that complementary organization is? So if you sit more on the engineering side, do you know who sits in FinOps, and do you feel like a team with them, or do you hope they don't pay attention to you? And vice versa, if you're more in the FinOps org, are you communicating clearly and articulating those expectations with your engineering counterparts, or does it feel much more contentious like I tried to make it? Great. Last word, Paulo.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I think I agree with both what Rob said. And I think as a close remark, this audience here clearly is very aware and put the costs into play and when they're decided. But you could be surprised when you're going back to your practice, to your own teams, and see how your team actually, if they even have a sense of that, right? If they really know, because sometimes, yeah, and I've been in conversation with architects that they are thinking about top, what they can do that brings the most amazing, like Ferrari to the company in the infrastructure from the infrastructure perspective. But as we know, a Ferrari is very expensive, right? So in order to bring value to the company is exactly what you want. You can make some changes, you can make some tricks in your plan that can bring that value that the company needs in the speed that they need, right? So, and what I would say is exactly what you said, like one signal that you're maturing your journey into cloud and your partnership with FinOps is how much this FinOps person is involved, and you are involved this person into bring this person to the table, right? Because what we don't want is just exploding cost, and that person would be really, you will see how beneficial that person could be to help you navigate and build in your narrative, because we all of you are doing amazing work at that, what you're doing. But that bridging that gap to how to communicate what you're doing and showing how this impacting the bottom line of the company, that's also something that it is a skill. So don't play this as they are not important or they don't know all the concepts and the very high level technical skills that you guys have, because they have other skills that can help you and benefit your team greatly. So I think that's a good, yeah.
Appreciating both skill sets and how they work together rather than trying to do a who's better than competition. Excellent. All right. Cheering for our engineers on the left side of the room. Loud and clear. Round of applause. There we go. Oh, wow, you got the whistle. And for our FinOps side of the room. And for the whole panel, Bhaskar in the middle. Everybody. Thank you for sharing your expertise, gentlemen. I appreciate having you up here. It sounds like our game of who wins. I was the big loser, that instead you're cooperating. Thank you for being here.